There's a book coming out. It's being written by some reporter named Ken Babbs from the Washington Post, I believe, if I remember correctly. And in the book, Mr. Kent Babb, B-A-B-B, for the Washington Post, writing a book, there are claims that Allen Iverson was drunk during that whole rant about practice, man. We talking about practice. That's what the new book claims. That press conference was May 3rd, 2002. Now, let me say this. First of all, I spoke to Allen Iverson this morning for 45 minutes before I touched on this subject. Secondly, and more importantly, I've known him for 19 years. So I know whatever there is to know about Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson was not drunk during that press conference. I'm going to repeat myself. Allen Iverson was not drunk during that press conference. I watched it on television. I wasn't there in person. I was in California on business for Fox at the time. I watched that entire press conference from start to finish. I've known Allen Iverson for 19 years. I covered him every day of his career for the first 10 years. Allen Iverson was not drunk during that press conference. Allen Iverson, on May 3rd, 2002, had already been a three-time scoring champion, had already been a three-time All-Star, had already been the league MVP in 2001, had already been the All-Star Game MVP that same year. He was also the 1996-97 Rookie of the Year. Allen Iverson had that press conference that was impromptu, that he called, because Allen Iverson was furious that here he is, one of the biggest names in the world, one of the global iconic figures in the world, who was in the prime of his career. Allen Iverson was disturbed because the Philadelphia 76ers were talking about trading him. Ladies and gentlemen, the 76ers were going to trade him to the Detroit Pistons. But in order for the deal to be consummated, Matt Geiger had a trade kick in his contract, and it would have to be waived in order for the trade to be consummated, and Matt Geiger refused to waive his his trade exception clause. That's what happened. Allen Iverson was furious that he was in trade talks. He couldn't believe that this is something that was being contemplated. And he called the press conference to make it clear that he wanted to stay in Philadelphia. You think I'm lying? Ask him. I'm not giving you conjecture. I'm not even going as far as to say I'm giving you inside information. I'm quoting him because I just spoke to him this morning. I'm quoting him because I covered him back then. I was the beat writer for the Philadelphia 76ers. I was 10 months away from being promoted to a columnist position for the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm telling you what I know. So here's this man. He sits up there and he wants to express himself. Needless to say, I've spoken to him thousands upon thousands of times. Look at him during that press conference and tell me if you've seen him talking then any differently than what you've seen during most of his interviews throughout his career. He was as lucid as can be. He was not drunk. That is a lie. But I'm not going to cast aspersions on Kent Babb or anybody else. I'm sure he's got a job to do, and I'm quite sure somebody told him that. I would assume he's not making it up. And the report indicates that Larry Brown and Pat Croce alluded to such things. They may have alluded to Allen Iverson drinking or being drunk. Not that day. I'm here to tell you there were days I saw Allen Iverson and he seemed drunk. It wasn't that day. Now, we can get into all of this other stuff about how is it that this happened 12 years ago. How is it that the man is now retired, but somehow, some way, somebody's coming out with a book attacking him this way? We could also get into why Allen Iverson feels that way, why he's not even fazed by it because lies are told on him all the time. But let me say this on a personal level. I know Allen Iverson. I'm unapologetic about the fact that I love this brother. I'm the one that's had to write things about him that weren't flattering at times. We've gone months without speaking to each other on at least 2 occasions because I had to do that. But our relationship resonates far beyond the game of basketball. I know this brother. And when everybody talks about him and being broke and all this stuff, he ain't broke, y'all. No, he doesn't have $100 million in the bank. He most certainly has blown millions upon millions of dollars. But I assure you, he's got millions. As he would say, as he said to me this morning, there's nothing that he used to do money-wise that he can't do right now. Still getting money from Reebok. Still getting money from anything attached to his name. Still got residuals coming in. When you saw Allen Iverson struggling, miserable, throwing his life away, it seemed, it's because you were looking at a zombie. Allen Iverson, at least a part of him, had died. For one reason and one reason only. His wife left him. Tawana. Y'all remember that name? He made a whole bunch of mistakes. As the kind of mistakes you can imagine a husband making with his wife. He did it. Absolutely. He'd be the first to tell you that. But sometimes the people you hurt are the ones you love most. And when they say enough's enough, after you spent a lifetime assuming they'd never go anywhere, it's devastating. That's what happened to Allen Iverson. That's why his world appeared in shambles for a few years, just a few years ago. And the reason why it doesn't appear that way now is because they're back together. His life is moving in a productive direction. And it amazes me that right at the time that that's happening, yet something else comes out to sully his name as if he needed additional help in that department. As Allen Iverson said to me this morning, quote, it's almost like folks are ticked off that Governor Douglas L. Wilder, former governor of Virginia, granted me clemency and got me out of jail over that bowling alley brawl that I should have never been in jail with in the first place, or that shouldn't have been in jail for in the first place. It's like they wish I had never had this money. They wish that I never had this success. They wish that I was a complete, total failure and that I was locked up. I don't know who feels that way. I'm not accusing Kent Babbs or anybody else of feeling that way. But it's moments like this that you get cause to pause. And it makes you think about what exactly are the agendas against this man. He's retired, for Christ's sakes. Ain't bothering a soul. And people still can't leave him be.